What's up, YouTube? This is Ben Parker back with another YouTube video. Last one was on piano arrangement I did for the CBS March Madness thing. Back to Chinese now. So the topic for today, and like I said, I'm trying to do. The goal is once a month. I want to do a video on just kind of some tips for my language learning journey with Chinese and Japanese. As time goes on, I'll do more Japanese as my Japanese gets better. But my Chinese right now is better, and I think I have more to offer on the Chinese side for now. But don't worry, if you're interested in Japanese stuff and my tips on learning that, more to come on that front. Today's video is specifically a Chinese sort of, if you want to call it learning video, tip video, whatever you want to call it. It's a Zhongwen video. And Zhongwen, for those that don't know, means Chinese in Mandarin Chinese. So the topic today is on the distinction between second tone, the ersheng, and the third tone, sansheng, okay, and just kind of my experience with differentiating between the two. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because for those that don't know Mandarin Chinese at all, there are there's really four tones, and they go, well, there's four, but there's a fifth neutral tone, which just like means like no tone, okay, and you'll see that as well, but there's four main tones. And there's four tones, and the first one is ma, high flat tone, and then ma, second tone, and then third tone, ma, and then the fourth tone, ma, right? So ma, okay, those are the four tones, and then ma means neutral tone, okay, so there's no tone, nothing, it's not a high pitch, it's not a low pitch, it's not rising, it's not falling, it's just neutral. That's why I say that it's like when you ask how many tones are there in Mandarin, I say, well, there's four tones, but then you don't want to like forget the neutral tone, because the neutral tone is also important, okay? And so, but when doing the, going through the tones, a lot of people sort of get second tone and third tone confused. And the reason why this is because the second tone is a rising tone, right? Ma, right? It's a rising tone. It's like you're asking a question, like, huh? What? Are you sure? That's a rising tone. And then the third tone also has is lower, but there is sort of a rising aspect to it a little bit. That's sort of how it's explained in textbooks. That makes it kind of confusing because you don't want to like rise the third tone as much as the second tone, and a lot of times you rise the third tone too much, so something like that. So what I've kind of found out here is that the third tone is much more. It's not like a low, it's not flat per se, like the Cantonese middle third tone is, which is like pronounced C. But like the middle tone, the third tone for Mandarin though, is pretty similar though. So don't worry as much about the bouncing, rising aspect of the third tone as you do the second tone, because it's a rising tone literally. So just really focus much more on getting down there and sounding like So now as you go through it, it's ma, right? So ma, third tone, ma, fourth tone. So once again, ma, excuse me, ma, right? So that third tone should be much more kind of lower, like that, okay? And to help illustrate this, I'm now going to flip to my, around here, to what I've written down on a sheet of paper, okay? As you can see here, this is what I've written down, and I think in an earlier video I actually already showed this to you guys, but once again, you can see it there, and I'll actually part this down. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So once again, ma, okay? So what I'm trying to get at is with the third tone, a lot of times you see that kind of going up and down thing. Third tone, you tend to pronounce it like, oftentimes you'll hear people say it should sound like this, ma. Well, that sounds pretty similar to ma, because there's a rising aspect to the second tone. There's kind of a rising aspect to that. What I'm trying to say is if you want to really make sure you differentiate these appropriately, don't worry as much about the rising parts. So instead of going ma, just go ma, okay, ma, okay. So does that make sense? So instead of overly emphasizing and bouncing the ma for third tone, not that it's wrong, but you'll sound a little bit better if you just go ma, Okay, so ma, 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 ma. So don't worry about the bouncing part as much. Don't worry about the rising part about this as much. Just make sure this one's rising and this one sounds kind of more just low, like you know. So once again, this is kind of how I've heard it pronounced the best way, I think. Ma, 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 ma. Once again, ma, 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 ma. Okay, so once again, this part aspect, the third tone here, don't worry as much about the rising aspect of it. Just worry about getting down there low, like that. Ma, ma, ma. Don't worry about it. Another thing too is as well is just really don't worry too much about. Understand that Chinese is context driven, and so when you're speaking Chinese, people will tend. Obviously, tones are extremely important. Fei Shang Hao, like really good, like really important. But do not worry too much about like, oh my gosh, like I missed one tone in a sentence, like now they can't understand me. It's very context driven. So really just focus on, get the tones right as best. Get the tones right for sure, but don't like OCD about like, oh, did my third tone sound a little too second tone-ish? Like relax, they'll know what you said. But as I said earlier with the third tone, don't worry as much about the rising aspect of the third tone. Just make sure you're getting down there low. So ma, right? That's what you want. Ma, that's what you want. If you pronounce your third tone like that, ma, there's no confusion because ma sounds very different from ma, very different. So that's that. But kind of as an exercise as well, what I have written down here is ni hao. Okay, it's like the most standard. Let me actually make this eye a little bit bigger. There we go. There we go. I had a little. The pinyin was right, but like the eye looked like a dot, literally. So that's ni hao, and that's like the standard, like classic hello greeting in Chinese. I'll do another video on this later, but like just know that like ni hao is like not how Chinese people greet each other once they have built up a bit of a rapport with each other. Ni hao is a very formal like way to greet people. It means hello, but it's just a very formal way to greet somebody if you do not know them. You'd say to like a stranger on the street, oh, ni hao. Or it's the first time meeting somebody, you'd say, oh, ni hao, 很高兴认识你. Like, hello, nice to meet you. But what I'm going to teach you guys really quickly here as a little bonus, as you can see here, ni and hao are both pronounced in the third tone. Okay, so ni hao. Okay, both pronounced in the third tone. Okay. And as a little bonus as well, ni means you and hao means good. And I know I said this wasn't going to be a Japanese video at all, but just for those that are learning Japanese, or people that are wondering what is the difference between Chinese and Japanese, what's one difference? In Japanese, you hardly use the word you, and you also hardly use the word I, which is wa in Chinese, and watashi in Japanese, and then in Japanese, you is anata. But you hardly use anata or watashi in Japanese. Watashi you use a little bit more in Japanese, but anata you rarely use. Actually, it sounds rude if you say you in Japanese all the time. Whereas in Chinese, you is built into the most basic fundamental greeting of all time in Chinese, which is ni hao. So little difference there for those that are wondering what's the difference between Chinese and Japanese. Like, just know that like you is hardly ever used in Japanese, whereas in Chinese, you and I are both used all the freaking time. Hence, ni hao. So anyway, so ni means you, and hao means good. Okay, so ni hao. Okay, you good? Are you good? Right? And it translates into, roughly speaking, it literally translates into you good, but it translates into just like hello or hi, right? That's what it translates into. Okay, in English, it's just hi or hello. So yeah. But what I'm showing you guys here is I'm showing you guys what's called the tone changing rule. Okay, so ni by itself is a third tone, and hao by itself is also a third tone. So ni hao by itself is two third tones. However, there is a tone changing rule in Mandarin Chinese in which the first third tone, okay, turns into a second tone. Okay, hence the little uptick here. And the third tone for hao staying the same. So, ni hao turns into ni hao. Okay, so so when you're saying hello to somebody in Chinese, just make sure that the ni is pronounced as the second tone. Ni hao. Okay, and the reason for this is it's just a more natural kind of rhythmic balance, because ni hao is a little more like, it's a little harder to say, it's a little more tiring to say that. So my guess is that this just comes from like pronunciation drift a little bit, in terms of just when two things come together. A lot of people just started saying ni hao, or they just started saying second tone when before the third tone, when there are two third tones together, and eventually it just became a rule. Anyway, there's other tone changing rules as well in Chinese, which I will probably address at another time. But this is the one to be aware of for today, for my video here. So, two third tones back to back. First third tone becomes second tone. So, ni hao becomes ni hao. Okay, so just know that. Note that tone changing rule. The third tone in ni turns into second tone ni, and so ni hao becomes ni hao. And obviously, like, don't worry too much about like. I mean, obviously, like, do follow the tone changing rule. But if you were to say ni hao, like third tone, you didn't do the tone changing rule, like, they would understand you, like, no problem. But just know that, like, that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. And actually, to be honest with you too, as you say it enough times, ni hao, you just naturally will do it, because it's the easier, more natural way to say it. Okay. So, any rate, I'm just scooting back here onto my chair. That's it. That is it for today's video. Like I said, I'm trying to do a monthly language learning tip video. So to quickly recap, when it comes to second tone and third tone, making sure you don't mix those up, making it indistinguishable. Really make sure, this is from my personal experience. Those that are learning Chinese, maybe there's other ways to help you learn, but for me at least, with the second tone, that's a rising tone, is what it is. Third tone, there is a rising aspect to it, like, but you go down first and you kind of go up. But I often made the mistake of like overcorrecting and over going up in the third tone to the point that it sounds like a second tone. So for me at least, like at the beginning, or like now, I'm just focusing much more on just going like that, like versus because can sound kind of like right? So so I'm not worrying about the rising aspect of the third tone as much right now. Just really focusing on going, okay, okay, so wa, I, ni, okay, right? So that's number one. So make sure with third tone, it just sounds down there low. So ma, right? So just make sure that third tone sounds low. Okay, that's number one. Okay, the second thing is with ni hao once again. Note the tone changing rule I showed you back there on my desk. So instead of going ni hao, go ni hao. Okay, so that ni becomes a second tone. Ni hao. And as I said, if you just say ni hao enough times, like, it'll just naturally come off as like a second, third tone. But note that is a tone change for all third tone combinations. So like you're saying, like, I'm good, you say well han hao, right? So same thing. Okay. And then the final thing, is just kind of a bonus difference between Chinese and Japanese as well, is in Chinese, you're going to hear the words wa for I and ni for you all the time. The words wa, I, and ni, you occur all the time in Chinese. You know, like, 我喜欢学中文, I like to say Chinese. 你想吃什么? Like, what do you want to eat? Dong dong, etc. Whereas in Japanese, in Ryu, as it's called in Chinese, or Nihongo ga, as it's called in Japanese, just know that the words you and I are seldom used, especially you. There's kind of a whole thing about you sound rude if you say you and stuff. And so since I'm kind of early on in my Japanese studies, like, I'm just kind of making a habit to like not say you at all. Whereas with the word for I, which is watashi, in Japanese, there's not really a stigma around saying it, so you can say things like, trying to think of an example, like in Japanese, like watashi no, oh yeah, this is a good example. So I have an aunt who's Japanese, so if I were to say like, oh, watashi no oba-san nihonjin desu, like, my aunt is Japanese, or like, watashi no neku, my cat, for example. Sorry, it's late. But so like you can say like watashi no or my mine or watashi wa, like watashi wa America jin desu, I am an American. But like in Japanese, you can often just drop the watashi and just say America jin desu, and they'll get what you're saying. So in Japanese, just note that like I isn't as commonly used. It's still used, but seldomly used. And then you is like anata, like really like avoid using that until you kind of get a feel for like when it's okay to use, because it is okay to use, but you just gotta like figure like out like okay, like when can I use this and when isn't. Most of the time, it's just more polite to just like refer to the person by their name and move on. Okay, so that's it with today's video. Hopefully, you found something useful out of it for my language learning journey. So once again, this is Ben Parker signing off. And if you want to connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the handle is slamdunk406. I'll provide a link to that in the description below. It's also on the About section of my YouTube channel. But I'll provide a link to that as well. And obviously, if there's any questions you have for me, or if you have any tips for me, if you're learning Chinese or Japanese, you have any tips for me, or if I happen to say anything wrong, feel free to let me know. And I will catch you guys on the next one.